So tonight we have our colleagues, our friends and colleagues from Baltimore City Schools to help us understand and to answer some questions that have come up since not just from our last meeting, but also since school has started. We shared a document that we sent out to parents and constituents to kind of capture some of those concerns and questions that didn't get answered in our last meeting, but also that have kind of bubbled up since then, and then especially since school has started. So tonight we have Sharika Stringer with us, James Dendinger, and Mark Etienne from City Schools to help with some of the conversation. Sharika also said that there may be some other folks that will join us too. So I think that that's as everyone's meetings and days are kind of coming to an end, folks will begin to kind of trickle in to this meeting tonight. So I'm going to open the floor to allow the folks from City Schools to begin to address some of the questions. I know that Mr. Dendinger has to be off a little early before the rest of us. So let's just start with you. Like this, you have the floor before the rest of us.
And can I just say, I'm getting texts that there might be people in the waiting room. If anyone's looking, do you see anyone there?
No, I don't see anyone in the waiting room, unfortunately.
Okay. All right.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is James Dendinger, and I'm the interim director for COVID testing. Like Larry said, I'm only going to be available until just a few minutes before 7 o'clock. I had a prior engagement, so my apologies for that. I didn't prepare a presentation necessarily because I provided that at the last PCAB meeting, but I am ready for any questions that you have about COVID testing.
So I think we wanted to go through the questions that community members have provided through the Google form. And there were, I can open that up, but one of the main, one of the most frequently asked questions or concerns was a concern with COVID testing not starting until the third week of school amidst the rise of the Delta variant and its increased risk of transmission. And included in that were comments and questions about why is testing even an opt-in instead of opt-out, so that testing could begin as soon as possible and people can opt out instead of opting into it.
Okay, so the question about why are we beginning testing on week 3, and I did address that at the last PCAB meeting, but I'm more than happy to share again. The reason that we did that is we need to collect consent forms from every student, and it would be very inappropriate to not have a consent form and test students. So that's really important. And I want to give you some context to that in March, when we began at the start of March, we began with pre-K, or we began with kindergarten, first and second grade students. And we began testing on week 2. The following, then 2 weeks later, we opened up school for grades 3, 4, and 5, I believe. And we began testing on week 2 again. And then, so it was a rollout of every 2 weeks, we had a different grade level. And that's with approximately 30% of the students returning, 35% of the students district-wide returning. And now we have all 79,000 students returning. We've had them all return this week. So with that being said, we just felt like it was important to give schools 2 weeks time to collect all the consent forms. So that's why we started during week 3.
A follow-up question that I have to that is, as far as the consent forms, does the district plan to release the percentage of folks that did not submit that form, or is that going to be something held to the chest on that?
Well, I think that's a fair question. It's not anything that we've really discussed, releasing the percent of families that have completed the consent form. So that's a good question, and it's a good suggestion.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? For PCAB, how do you think that might impact whether families do or do not submit that form?
I can share in my opinion. I think one of the things that would be helpful for that is just to know what the next steps are. So even in asking the question of like, what is the percentage of people who fill out the form or who do not fill out the form, the follow-up should be, what is the district doing to ensure that those folks who will not be tested will not be the reason that we see a large amount of kids quarantined. So from the conversation that we had last time, James, one of the things that stood out into my mind is that the consent form isn't mandatory. And then if a parent decides that they don't want to get tested, there didn't seem to be any follow-up. And maybe I misunderstood, so please feel free to, clarify that point. But for a parent, it's extremely concerning. Let's say if maybe 5% comes back, how are we to know that those 5% that they're being monitored in a way, or not necessarily monitored, but just to ensure that they're not entering into the school system and spreading the variant or any part of the COVID?
Yeah, for a student who doesn't have a consent form, and if they demonstrate COVID-like symptoms, they would have to quarantine. We would ask them to get a test by their medical provider. So we would do that. So we would be, certainly we would be monitoring their conditions, and certainly if they are referred to the health suite for COVID-like symptoms, we would be addressing that with an expectation that the family would go and seek their own COVID test from their own medical provider. And then as far as how are we addressing students who have not turned in consent forms, that is something that we're monitoring. We have protocols in place, and we have a series of escalating letters that we would send to the parents, that we have outreach planned also for any families who we do not receive a consent form from.
So in this first couple of days of school, there already have been some cases that have been shared and reported. How will we, and without having that consent form out, how is that being addressed?
Yeah, so since we do not have asymptomatic testing until week 3, we are still testing symptomatic students if they've turned in a consent form. So that would, of course, necessitate that the student has brought in a consent form already, within these first 4 days of school. And if so, we would test the student on site for symptomatic testing. Now, so I do want to say that the symptomatic testing on site is right now in the K-8 schools, because that's what we're set up for with the symptomatic testing.
We have a question in the chat. The COVID dashboard is down. What is the plan to get it back up and running?
So we are discussing that right now, and we are working on getting that up and running again. We just want to update it for this school year, because the data from last year, of course, is last year. So it's just right now that we're in a transition phase right now, but we do expect to have that dashboard up and running.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? So respectfully,
I understand it takes a little while to get it up and running, but there's no way you can put up an Excel spreadsheet or anything in the interim. And the reason I'm asking that is I know you're reporting data to MSDE. We see cases being reported to MSDE, including a large and substantial outbreak at Lily Mae Carroll Jackson School of 13 students. And in addition, a follow-up question about the testing, both symptomatic and asymptomatic. So I understand that the asymptomatic testing is delayed. But in reading the SOP document, it appears that partners are responsible for their own testing. And there was no discussion in the SOP about how partners are reporting those cases or that information is being verified to keep our children and staff safe. And in addition, what responsibility or reporting is done by contractual staff, for example, speech, OT, PT, and other allied health professionals that are working in one-to-one with our children who are coming from organizations like Villa Maria or elsewhere. In the classroom, but are not staff in the definition of SOP and are not quite partners either.
Yeah, so right now, as far as the dashboard goes, it is our intention to have it up and running next week. So yes, now about the partners, can you repeat that question?
Sure. So in the standard operating procedure document that's posted online, last updated 8/10, August 10th, that document says, to summarize, that partners, school partners using space, are responsible for their own COVID testing of individuals, and they expect that information to be reported to city schools. But there's no details on what the expectations for partners are, like regularized asymptomatic or symptomatic testing, how that information is being reported or verified. If there's a partner case, how people in the building are going to get that notification from the partner to city schools, to staff, to children. And then I had a question about what defines partner, because we have staff and we have students in the SOP document, but we don't have contractors, and contractors are an enormous proportion. Probably shouldn't say enormous, a substantial portion of individuals, particularly who work with students with IEPs, who are OT, PT, speech, behavioral health, who come from Villa Maria and other allied organizations. And the document is not clear about the responsibilities and reporting and testing for contractual individuals who work one-to-one with children, who are not staff.
Yeah, well, I would have to get back to you on that because, there's many partners. I can say that there are some partners that are tested on site at the school. So for example, a Johns Hopkins counselor would be tested on site with the staff. So it depends on the specific partner.
So your response to me right now, sir, and I'm trying real hard to be calm, is you do not know, and there is not a standard operating procedure for the myriad of contractors who are operating in buildings across the city system, including multiple buildings. For example, speech therapists that go from building A to building B to building C, sometimes on the same day, to work with our most vulnerable children who have IEPs and 504 plans. That's what you're saying to me right now. You don't know.
Yeah, I would want to get back to you on the specifics of what you're asking.
So noted.
Other questions, colleagues?
I'm looking through the form, give me 2 seconds. Many of the questions are really just around making sure that they understand that third week, which Jane was able to explain. I think we need a little bit of clarification about the distancing. So one of the things, and I don't know, I know this is not really in your wheelhouse, but I think you talked about it a little bit last time, or maybe Sharika, but the concern is, of course, again, with the lack of distancing that we've seen in classrooms now that some of us have been able to enter into the classroom, and then the testing not being there, folks are a bit concerned, as they should be, especially because for the most part, some of our students will not have symptoms. So there's a significant amount of stress there. So Would you be able to explain to us as far as the reasoning behind removing the shields, the 3 feet distance, all of these things kind of changing, outside of course, that the CDC recommends it? Is there any additional kind of feedback there?
Well, yeah, I can speak to that some. So the fact that CDC recommends it is actually pretty important. In addition to that, though, there is, so for both dust shields and social distancing, there then has been additional input from the state of Maryland, as well as our local health experts. So combining all of that information together from all of those different health experts influences our protocols, including those 2 changes that you noted.
Okay, so the 3 feet distance. So for example, I went to my son's school. He's grouped together, 3 in a spot. Right in front of him is 3. I don't know that there's 3 feet distance, but is there a protocol to ensure that these classrooms are set up efficiently as far as that distancing?
Yeah, so there is no minimum distance this year.
Okay.
We went from 6 feet last year to 3 feet over the summer to distance as much as possible for the fall. And that guidance is from public health experts considering the total picture of student health. So they're looking not only at the physical risk, but they're also looking at the social and emotional, and have really prioritized making sure that we're able to bring students back fully. And so their recommendation is distance as much as you can while being able to accommodate all students.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions to that before I don't want to kind of occupy too much of the time? All right, then I'll go into the next one. So as a follow-up to that, my question, I guess, is the confusion that a lot of parents are getting right now is that they feel like they have not been told what to expect when they went to go and see these classrooms in person. So for example, absolutely love my school, have made the commitment to stay in Baltimore for as long as I can to keep my son and my daughter at the school. But I did not know that the shields would be gone. I did not know that there was no spacing, because I was under the impression that it was 3 feet, and a lot of parents were. So what are we doing to ensure that between the district and the local schools, that everyone is being communicated with, and that the parents feel like they understand what's happening? Because the anxiety that this produces is that parents are coming into these classrooms or hearing from their kids that things have gone back to normal, or there's no distance, there's no this, and we feel left out of that conversation. Yes, there is a 50-page document that's on your website. Yes, we all go through these meetings. We're all very much involved in these conversations, but we're talking about those parents who may not want to read or read a whole thing. They don't have the ability to go on the website and find those things. They're the parents who love their students still, but they don't have that same connect with city schools. Like, I'm at my son's school all day. They know my name, my face. All parents aren't like that. So what are we doing? What are we doing to help build that communication bridge?
Yep. So I can start speaking to it, and others can join in if they want. And I think we're using the multi-layered approach to communication, like we often do. So for the health and safety protocols, of course, there is the SOP. As you mentioned, it's a very dense document, but also on that page on the website, there's an overview so that people can very simply see, here are what the protocols are for fall 2021. And those protocols have been available on there for a while. They're also put together graphically. So there's a one pager, so people can see in not just text what those expectations are for the fall. There was a town hall maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'm losing track at this point. So web communication, town hall, it was pushed, those protocols were pushed out via email as well. And then there's also the school component that you talked about. And so, you know, principals and school leadership, you know, were to reach out to families just as they always are when there's important information to get out. So those are kind of the multiple touch points that have been utilized here.
Completely understand that. So one of the things that I think is something that you all can take back to your team is that, so this form went up in a day. We got 54 responses in a day from one platform. And a lot of us in their different capacities have talked to a lot of parents. So as someone who works in marketing and communications and understanding target audiences and have been in public city schools since middle school, there's always been a disconnect as far as how parents are communicated to. And it's starting to kind of feel like maybe there's a disconnect between Baltimore City Public Schools ways of communication and what our parents really need. So even if that's not really something that you can actually kind of speak to, but that's how I kind of feel, because a lot of the feedback that we're seeing here are the same questions, a lot of them just not really knowing where to go. And I feel as though the mediums that you all are using may not be the right ones to get to all of these types of parents. So it's just something that you might want to consider. It's just maybe looking at that strategy and figuring out a new way, because the text and all of those are great, but if I don't have my phone updated or my cell phone updated, I don't get those. If my inbox is full, which usually it is because there's a lot of stuff that comes to it, I don't get the emails. So there's a multitude of ways. And if I don't believe in social media, which unfortunately I'm on there all day for all the different things I have to do, I may not see that. So that's the 3 ways that you've said that you reach out to parents. And there are some people that do not get that. And we've had to go and talk to, while we're waiting for our kids, talk to families about how they feel about things, to hear like, oh, I have no idea. I didn't hear anything about that. So that's just something to kind of think about. And I saw Angie's hand go up, so I won't occupy any more time.
Hello everyone, good evening, and thank you all for even being here to answer these questions and our concerns. As far as the communication, I think that is really, it really needs some work. Even, I guess, during the town halls or things that were going on, this is before families could opt in and out of the virtual program. It seemed like it was a lack of communication, even with knowing which virtual program they were going to be in, what the curriculum was going to be in, what the curriculum was going to be about. There was just very small minimum. And so for me, I decided to put my child back in because there was nothing in ground to say, this is what the curriculum would be, the program would be. It was just simple. This is, a limitation of the virtual program. And the only reason I'm saying that is because all of this was said prior to that opening, that window. And it also had that the proper safety measures was going to be in there, along with the social distancing. All of that was before. And then things changed, but then it became lengthy. And I agree with Kara just saying that the communication is not really being dispersed to I don't know if it's to the schools, to the families, but it could be a lot better. And I want to go even further to say that me personally, I don't know if we can talk about this or not, but I'll say it, is that what I looked at when my child was going to go back to school, we did like every school did, sneak a peek at this classroom. Can I just say, as of today, I have not seen my daughter's classroom. You know why? Because Thursday I received the email that her class was exposed to mold. And so she was in a different classroom. So fast forward, it's fixed, right? It just seemed like how even we received this letter on Thursday and it was fixed just like this. And so now I have not seen that classroom. It goes even further with the AC. All of that was communicated that the school was going to be an AC school back in February, March. And we never got any correspondence to say that this was not going to happen.
And just to kind of add to Angie's, and that this is the same that's kind of have come up with uniforms as well. And I just kind of question, like, I know that the district is on a lot of work around building and strengthening its partnership muscle, and just kind of trying to figure out why did we not think about, you know, some of the folks who are boots on the ground that could really kind of help and support getting those messages out, right? Like, we understand that it's not always the texting, it's not always the robocalls, it's not always the emails, right? But there are enough folks and organizations and people who are, like, what I like to sometimes say, who are district adjacent, right? Who could have been very beneficial over the summer up until the first day of school and supporting getting some of those messages out. A lot of times parents have relationships with those organizations and have strong relationships with those organizations versus the district, right? And so really thinking about how you build that muscle and tighten up those relationships with those folks who are in partnership with about taking care of children and families in the city, right? Who really can help to kind of get that message out. I just think we might have missed, I'm not gonna say we missed the train on that, but I think it might have been been helpful, not even kind of laying all this stuff on community school coordinators, like even this other layer of people who are out in the street doing the work, really could have been very supportive in getting messages out.
Larry, hold on 1 second, Ms. Tina, because I think one of the things is what you just said, Larry, people who are out and doing the work, right? That's critical. And I have 4 kids at Montebello, which I think everybody and their mama knows. But I think the idea of, I went to back to school night, the room was hot last Thursday. They could have said last Thursday, hey, the AC is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. We're going to delay school to after Labor Day, especially for the school that doesn't have AC. But when I asked, they said, oh no, it will be fixed. So I said, okay, I trusted you. It wasn't until Sunday night that they said, hey, school tomorrow will be half a day. If someone works outside the city or they take a bus all the way to Northern Parkway, how are they supposed to get back within 3 hours? That has disrupted everything in our house. And we have 5 kids all together. It's not just our kids go to city schools. We have daycare we have to think about. And it's not just us. We have parents at Montebello that work at supermarkets. You don't get to take off sick days and whatnot just because. And it's like, who's paying? My family, my husband is an hourly worker. If he has to take off time, nobody is compensating that. You know, and I don't even know who's on this call, but you guys know we have Title I schools in our district. That means our salaries are limited. So if we're taking off days because you guys knew that the schools didn't have proper units, you could have said last week, 2 weeks ago. It's not like you guys knew it last night. You knew it the whole time. And you could have just forewarned parents to say, hey, you have to make some decisions because in a month we're going back to school, but we don't have the proper stuff for this school yet.
I just wanted to quickly. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, just quickly on Larry's point, and I'm gonna address the AC point.
Okay.
Larry, we're trying to do that, and I did put in the chat. I am open and willing for anybody who has suggestions about different ways to reach out to families. I will honor and just say that we know that not all of our families get emails and texts and they did in the town halls, right? So we are trying to build that cadre of partners through our PI portal, that if a partner is in a PI portal, they get our information just like families get it. And we're asking them to sort of be those ambassadors. And then we have a community advisory group. We're trying to look through by neighborhood on the ground to identify who are those neighborhood partners who carry that water, because if they're not just a partner at a school, but are in a neighborhood where they have trusted relationships, how do we get information to them so that they can send it out? Because to me, the ambassador strategy is huge. And I agree, Jessica, in your chat, you put the community schools coordinators and that kind of thing. They're doing their job too of trying to reach out to families, but it's really challenging, especially when we're in virtual.
Yeah.
And now folks can't gather in schools that we want to, because let's be clear about something. Pre-pandemic, we rely on our school communities to get information out to families because they are more trusting in the school community. They're more regularly attending meetings at the school, that kind of thing, backpack things home, that kind of thing. This virtual thing has sort of upended that and totally switched around. But like I said, our communications team is completely open to suggestions. We will pivot. We will do what we need to do. But I totally believe, Larry, in this idea around community ambassadors sharing information. So for example, just quickly, Bishop Nunez over at Bilingual Church, I met with him this week and said, can I come talk to your congregation of all the families who are non-English speaking families to get information out to them? He said, come on, let's figure it out. So Sabrina's putting that together right now. We are willing and ready to go do that at any time. Just very quickly on the AC thing, and then I'll stop talking. I cannot speak to the knowledge of whether or not that particular school's AC was working prior to the first day of school, because I'm not aware of that. But what I will say is we cannot make decisions 2 weeks before because we have to figure out temperature of the day. So there are 21 schools that do not have air conditioning right now, and we know that. And if the classroom gets above a certain temperature in the building, that is when we close the school. Otherwise, we want to keep kids in the building. So the premise is, if the temperatures are not, so we knew it was a heat wave coming, so we tried to announce as soon as we could. And I agree, maybe it could have been evening 4 or whatever if we had anticipated the temperature stuff. So I will work on that with our internal team. But sometimes it is hard because we do have to work with the temperature of the day. And I know that it's super, super inconvenient. And I will just say we are trying our best to get all these. Our long-term plan for air is around the next phase of schools. We should be done after next school year of having all of our air. Now, I can't predict that one won't go down and we got to fix it, right? But at least we have a plan to get the last set of schools their air conditioning through our CIP funding. So sorry, Larry, I know you wanted to comment on the other piece.
No, I just wanted to because I just kind of got dropped. I'm not sure what happened, but just quickly, I wanted to end. I did want to say, and I'm not sure how much you heard, but my daughter's school, when I put it in here, Yorkwood, they were set to have, the AC installed in there. We received a letter in the spring that it was. So my situation is a little different. And so it's approved over the spring. It was going to happen over the summer. And we didn't know until parents came into the sneaker peek and got a sneak of the heat that came to our face. And it felt like a sauna. And I wanted to know, where's that communication to say, even if you said the project had to be pushed back to next year or to the winter or whatever, I think the lack of communication is where parents are upset about. And the mold, fine, possibly, even though I still feel like you had a whole time to figure this out in the school. And I want to say that it is fixed with the mold. I want to also always say that, my daughter's school and the leadership over there is amazing. However, they deserve to have an AC school. Like right now, I'm going through the community association and umbrella organizations to really fight to do that. I've also spoke to media. At this point, I hate to say this, and I hope it doesn't come off as a disrespect, but just tired of the excuses. And as I stated, it didn't take much to say this project is pushed back. I work at a job where our material had, makes projects push back. Just the communication from the district would have really been helpful. I mean, I was telling people, hey, the school is going to be an AC because that's the last thing we heard in the spring. And I like to know, where did that communication, where did the ball drop? Because, I just think that it could be a lot better. And I don't know exactly how to make it, but if we were able to get that communication in the spring, we could have gotten it again to say, because you knew that the project had to be pushed back. At this moment, I have not received any feedback to say when the targeted date is happening. And I think that's very disheartening. And that's it. I'm sorry that I dropped it. I don't know what happened with my connection.
I just want to piggyback on you, Angie, really quickly, and then I'm going to shut up. And I
Who's that? Okay, Jermaine. Okay.
So, let me tell you, something just happened today. My daughter came. First of all, I didn't even get a schedule for my children. Let's start with that, right? Didn't even get a schedule to tell me what their courses were. My oldest daughter is supposed to be in gifted and talented, but we don't get no information either on that, right? One of the things she came to me and said, I said, Julisse, did they give you a schedule? The schedule said mathematics. She's in 8th grade. She's applying to high school. I'm like, well, are you in honors again? She said, oh no, Ma. They told me there's no room. There's not enough seats for honors classes. So they dropped me from honors class. I said, well, how did they make that decision? Not tell me on the 4th day of school. This is what's happening. It's not just my child. And I asked the principal, I walked across the street to ask the principal, how is this going to impact my child when she's applying to high school? Because if I'm not mistaken, from what I learned from PCAB, her honors courses are weighted heavier and give her extra weight to compete. So if she's being dropped from honors classes, that means even though she has all A's, she will not be given a score that's able to compete to get to certain high schools. Now, I'm the type of person, I'm not originally from Baltimore, so high school doesn't have as much weight to me as other parents. But it's the point that how do you do that on the 4th day and not tell the parent? How do you have middle schoolers with schedules that just say mathematics as if there's not geometry, algebra 1, pre-algebra? How do you guys do that and feel it's okay not to communicate? And when I approached the principal was like, well, there's nothing I can do. Sir, that's incorrect. Have you talked to Dennis Jutra? Is there an online program my child can take to take classes? And I believe I asked this earlier in the spring. My school does not offer foreign languages. That already means my child can apply to certain programs. The school does not train in music education. We have music classes, but they won't learn a darn thing. They won't learn how to read music. Is there an online portion that that are willing to enroll their child online can do it, whether it's specialized education, so that they can have an opportunity to compete? And I think that's all I'm asking. When I used to work for Ames, and BSA would constantly say, we cannot get enough students from the city because they don't know how to read music, they don't know how to do this. And I'm sitting like, you're a city school. This is your job, and maybe not it's BSA's job, it's city school's job to prepare kids to be able to apply to these specialized programs. If I want my child to go to Poly for engineering, so they could be an engineer like Sharika, she should be able to do that. It should not be a barrier because she is a young Black girl in a Title I school and city schools. That should not be a barrier to my child. And it's not fair. And it's frustrating. And it's more frustrating because I learned on the 4th day of school that this is the case. If that's the case, you should have told me before the summer so I can find a school that offers honors classes. And then the district should be communicating with parents. Hey, these are all the list of students that have been tagged gifted and talented. Hey, these are the options you have. This school, your school that you're currently enrolled in, does not offer honors classes for your students, even though your student has been tagged for the last 6-7 years. This is not something new. Sharika used to be my community school coordinator. I have fought this battle with Margaret Brent, and I have taken it across. I will leave a school for my kids. I got too many stretch marks to sit there and deal with a principal to make decisions for my child. It's just not going to happen. I'm done. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Tina.
I just want to say, can you send me an email directly about that situation, and Mark and I can talk about it offline, because the 3R plan does push for more honors math programming, but that specific example, if you can send us an email,
please.
I know Mark came on because we need to address that directly.
And can I ask that, because Ms. Drayton was here today and was very verbal about her children, but can we also understand the fact that she's speaking for her kids, but there's a city worth of children who are in the same exact situation as Ms. Drayton. And so by her sending a private email, I just want to make sure that the same energy that goes behind making things right for her and her kids, that happens for the other children who are in that same situation. But I know you guys will do that. Make sure you do that.
That's right, Mr. Simmons. First, Ms. Drayton, terribly sorry this is happening. It's not right. I'll just say that out front. And secondly, as you were speaking, I was taking notes, and I was actually texting to find out who the ILED of the school is, so I can talk with them about addressing it. But also, for getting in front of the ILEDs, so we can get the data out, to your point, Mr. Simmons, on how many other schools are doing this, where else is this happening, so that we can address it at scale. So when I was listening, I certainly was listening in terms of your children, Ms. Drayton, but I'm also thinking about where else is this happening, and how can we, as quickly as possible, at least learn where it's happening so that we can begin to address it. So I appreciate you making that point. And Tina, you and I will connect and think about how we're going to be able to pull this data so we can figure out where else this is happening.
Can I ask a question, an update, please, on transportation for students with disabilities? Because I've had a number of people reach out to me now and say they have made multiple calls and they still do not know how their children are getting to school. These are folks who, because I unlocked my Twitter account, to be perfectly frank, are like DMing me that I do not know them. And they are saying, can you please help me? Because literally no one will call me back and I don't know how to get my child to school. And these are families around the city with children who educational rights, you know, I have told some of them, I'm like, you should call a lawyer, because these are folks who are hugely frustrated. They're like, I've called, the school has called. Some of them have combined issues with homelessness or housing instability. And so they should doubly be provided transport under McKinney-Vento and as an IEP student. And they cannot get an answer about when their child will be transported to school.
And I just want to
Melissa,
add
can
to
you
that.
clarify? I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. Are you saying it's students who have been approved for transportation,
Yes.
but don't have their details, or are they approved and the glitch is in the lack of bus drivers that we have? Plus,
It's
you know, a 30% of our folks called out the very first day of school, just to be real transparent with all of you. Tell me what the real is so I can go back.
so I've had all of the above. I've had people say my kid is approved for transport, but I don't know what time the bus is supposed to come. Like I never got details about who's picking my kid up, what route, is it a van, is it a bus, what's happening, right? And it's particularly kids who move to a new school because of a grade level transition, where they went from like a K through 8 to high, or they went to a different middle program from a K through 5 school. And they never got details about the new school and how they're supposed to get there. Then it's people who have those details and they're like, they just haven't showed. Like I've had to drive my kid every single day this week. And I am asking, when are we going to have drivers so that I don't have to drive my kid because I've been late to work every day this week? And the best answer I can get is we're working on it. And again, these are families who, like others people have described on the call, are hourly workers and are missing pay and trying to juggle their child who should have transport with 1 or 2 other children, trying to get them to school too. And it's a very stressful situation for those families.
Hi, Tina. This is Monique Rumo. I apologize, everyone, that I'm not on camera. Zoom keeps shutting down on me. I'm the acting executive director for operations, and I can answer a couple of the things that were just flagged. So starting with the transportation issue, yes, as Tina stated, we have a significant driver shortage, much more than previous years. Generally, we have tried to use taxi cabs to support when we have a driver shortage. This time last year, we had 220 plus cab drivers. At this time, we only have 30 cab drivers. That's just to help you guys understand some of what we're dealing with. And so transportation has been working around the clock to try and get our students routed and the transportation they need. We had found out about incoming 9th graders and 6th graders that when they were going into their new school, there was an issue with the system with that information getting in. And so that caused part of the delay for those particular populations. And if there are additional questions or things I don't answer, please drop them in the chat so that I can connect with transportation and try and get those answers to you. If I can also answer some of the questions that came up regarding the AC plan, specifically at Yorkwood, we do have a plan that is on our website, and I apologize on behalf of our design and construction teams for any thing that was not communicated to our families. That's one of the things that we as operations have recognized that we have not put in the forefront to make sure that the information goes beyond the school leadership and into the community that is impacted on that. One of the things we've put in place, and we've partnered with Tina's team, we do have an engagement specialist that is working specifically with operations so that we can begin to make sure that those communications go beyond just school leadership and look at creative ways to make sure it's passed to the school community. There was another question, and I apologize, that came up around I believe the AC plan that I'm just not recalling at the moment. But if I think about it, I'll certainly jump in and answer the questions.
Good question. You said it was on the website, the school's website? I mean, the district's website.
Oh, yes. So
Is there a way you could put the link if you know offhand, or?
Yes, I'll drop it in the link for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and it recently updated. Yep, I'll put
You
it in
know,
the-
you said recently updated. Do you know when it was updated?
Yes, we updated it prior to the start of the school year. Now, what I do want to say is I spoke with Andre Riley. He is on Tina's team. One of the things that I had flagged for him is that I feel where we can do better is we knew and know our schools without AC. That's on the website. What we could have done is communicated a couple of weeks in advance to say, remember, these are non-AC schools. Let's let the school community and families know so that they can prepare. So we definitely anticipate doing that moving forward. We did not get to that this year. And that was, yes, we apologize for that.
And just for clarity and transparency, do you know when it was placed on there? You said before, that could have been Thursday when we received the letter about the mold. Can you tell me when, a timeline, when that was actually placed on the website?
Oh, it's been on the website at least since, I'm gonna go all the way back to February, at least February. In terms of school without AC, I don't know exactly when the website was set up, but it definitely goes back to at least February.
Okay, so so that's only listing the schools that are without AC.
Yes, just the
Okay, so that's not giving me the project because that was already approved. Is there a way to track the projects of which ones are going to be, which ones are on track for that project? Because as I stated, we received one saying that it would be done over the summer.
It lists the plan for the schools and the anticipated completion date.
Okay.
Does not say, yeah, if you're looking for specifically the project information, that's not there. And I am pulling it up now to drop it in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much.
Follow up for you, Monique. So I did see that the district and they're setting the record straight and making sure that they connected the dots of the 21 schools without AC. So in the last 18 months, have any of the school buildings without AC received AC during that time?
Yes, absolutely. Since we started the plan in 2017 with 76 schools that were without AC, and we're now down to that 21. And so projects have been ongoing since that time and are currently ongoing.
Okay, I think more specifically, just like while these buildings were empty. So like when we talk about Angie, and I know, and I truly, truly appreciate all of you because this conversation is so much more helpful and it makes all of us feel a little bit better when we are able to express ourselves and feel like we're being heard. So I do want to say that before I continue, but when we look at a school like Angie's, where there's a scenario where the AC wasn't fixed and there was mold. So fast forward or go back into the past, maybe a month before that, was anything being done in the last 18 months when students were not in the classrooms to get us back on track as far as, or speed up the process of putting ACs there? Like I understand between the 2017 and now, but during pandemic times when we had space and freedom to do things.
Yes, and Maurice Gaskins may jump in to provide some clarifying information if I don't get it. So there were a number of AC projects that were fast forwarded or sped up during this time. So, and just to keep in mind, there are a limited number of contractors. So it's not like we can say, all right, let's take everyone in every school and install right now. But then it's also about the timing of the funding as well. So we were able to speed up a number of things during the pandemic. I feel like there was a part 2 to your question. You mentioned the mold. So oftentimes the mold isn't necessarily the result of not having AC in the building. Usually there might be high humidity in that space that could have produced that mold. And so as soon as we were notified about any mold issue, we got our teams out there. We have Ingrid Brailsford on the call today. She's over the environmental compliance team. And so we sent teams out to do the mitigation, do the testing, make sure the air quality was tested in those spaces where mold was found.
Awesome. And then just one follow-up, this AC related. So one of the things that I've heard in the last two days is just a lot of confusion about like the HEPA air filters. And I see that it's on your website. I completely understand that. I haven't seen anything about it on social or anyplace else, but I could have missed it. Can you explain what has been done to add the HEPA filters to those particular schools and why students are not seeing the same standard filter that they were seeing last year? Can you speak to that?
Yes. So what we did across all of our school buildings, all the systems were assessed to determine if they can receive MERV 13 filters. That is the upgraded recommended filter that ASHRAE, that's a national standard for HVAC systems, where they recommended that schools do a combination of either MERV 13 filters or air purifiers. We typically have MERV 8 or MERV 10 filters in our system. And basically the MERV 13 has a finer filter that catches more particles. And so the reason we tested our systems, the systems that could receive them got those in their systems. The ones where the system would be adversely impacted or where we did not have a central AC HVAC system in that building, we installed air purifiers, which is sufficient for ventilating and cleaning the air in that space. And I wish John Collins was on the call, because if I use some of the terminology incorrectly, I apologize, but that is it.
He's here.
In a nutshell, it's a combination of MERV 13 filters. Folks wouldn't see those, and air purifiers in other spaces. And that is also provided on our website so that families and schools could see if their building was MERV 13 or air purifier. Many of the air purifier schools were considered hybrid just because for their gyms and their common spaces, they had systems that could receive those MERV 13 filters. So that's where you would see a hybrid, but their classrooms got air purifiers.
Okay, thank you for that.
No problem. All cafeterias and all gymnasiums received air scrubbers. Those are just much larger air purifiers.
Well, happy that you went on to lunch, because we have a significant amount of questions about that. So give us the lowdown on lunch. So Sharika, you got us all fired up last time because you were like, kids aren't really supposed to be talking and laughing and joking inside of there, spreading their germs. So what we're noticing the first week of school are that some schools are able to fundraise and get outdoor spaces for lunch while others aren't. Is this a school by school situation? What exactly is the district's plan to ensure that all of our students are eating lunch and utilizing maybe outdoor spaces? Is it district to, or not district? Is it school to school? Is it, kind of talk through that for us?
Yeah, so I'm sorry I got you guys riled up about the talking, but it is an important strategy because you know, mealtime is a real focus area. And so there has been an expectation that schools utilize outdoor spaces for meals, and that has been an expectation. Their capacity to do so does vary by school. So you know, as you all can see now, there are some schools that may be able to do that to a large extent, and there are some schools that are able to do that to a limited extent. We see that in this first week already. So what we're doing now is going school by school and understanding what are the barriers that they're seeing with meeting that expectation and what can be done to address those barriers. So is there a particular item that's needed? Is there, you know, what is it that they need in order to meet that expectation? Because it is the expectation.
And are schools or administration able to, or kind of blessed by the district to step into some of the relationships that they may have within their communities, right? So like if lunch looks a little crazy for the school building, are schools able to connect with some of the churches in their neighborhood to provide lunch via the church space? Like, are they able to become as creative as they can be to make sure that children are getting lunch and are having that free time that young people need during the middle of the day?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. To my knowledge, there has not been a school that has raised that as their barrier. We could provide outdoor lunch if only we were approved to walk 30 feet over and go to that space. And I don't know if anyone else on the call has insight to that, but I have
Yeah.
not seen that raised as a barrier.
Well,
And
I'm
if
just
it
bringing that up.
were,
I'm just bringing that up because every day is not going to be sunny, right? And so there are going to be rainy days. And I just think that like this is an opportunity again for you guys to give administration the blessing to really step into the creativity around partnerships. We can't do things the way we've always done things because this is not those times, right? And so people should be able to feel comfortable enough to build on some of those relationships. And if we're in like spaces where they're like 35 and 40 kids to a classroom, you know the cafeteria is going to be crazy, and you don't have enough time in a school day to have 5 lunch shifts for an elementary school, right? Or 6 lunch shifts for a middle school. So I really think that there's an opportunity for you guys to be supportive of creative thinking through for administrators, and really kind of push them to be creative in that and not lay it all on the community school
is
coordinator.
Larry,
Yeah,
is that just me?
there's Larry. Yeah, and you know, this is an opportunity to be really creative about what partnerships really look like throughout all of this. And then I think we had some things in the chat.
Yeah, there were a couple follow-ups on lunch.
Larry, you were-
One
Did I break up?
didn't break up for me, but I think Sharika might have some issues on her side.
One of the things that was mentioned too is the investment in outdoor spaces. So we talked a little bit about it, but one of the things that people, of course, they're thinking about the ARP and CARES Act funds and trying to figure out, are we putting an investment into there? And what does that investment look like? Because every situation is different. Do we have any details on that specifically?
Yep, I'm moving. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Can you hear me okay? I turned my
Yeah.
video off too.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep. So let me just go back to Larry's point about creative solutions and using community-based options. I think that I love the creative thinking. And my thought is that if that idea were brought up, you know, we would be able to you know, do something different if only we were allowed to move into a different space or something. I think that idea would be considered. So I'm not aware of principals being told you cannot be creative in your problem solving.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think that this is an opportunity for you guys to be more supportive and with folks being creative in their problem solving. Like, so like, just like you said, there's something that folks aren't allowed to do. Well, that not allowed to do kind of worked 2 or 3 years ago when we weren't in this COVID space. So I think that we have to go back and look at some of those things that you were not allowed to do 2 years ago that we need to be allowed to do this school year. Still making sure that folks are safe, making sure that folks are getting what they need, but really, stepping out of what we weren't allowed to do in the past, and really kind of stepping into the future.
Well, and I think also Kira's point is there's money coming into the school district from various COVID federal funds, and can't some of that money be pointed just towards buying the stuff that's needed at every school for outdoor lunch, and can the problem be solved that way? Maybe that's oversimplifying, but sometimes outdoor lunch just means you need some canopies and some tables that aren't there, and a budget item can be pointed towards that.
So
And bodies. You need bodies for outside too, right?
Sure, those cost money too.
yeah.
So just because I think what Larry and the team are saying is so critical, because that's what I literally had that conversation with the principal today, with my principal. I said, hey, we know one of my daughters are in 3rd grade. We know 3rd grade is critical. That's the year the state looks at their results. We know that city is testing because MSDE is testing this year. We have a new state superintendent. What's going on with the library? Well, we don't have a library. We don't have the budget for a librarian. So how are the kids going to read? How are we going to get books in these kids' hands so that they're taking books home weekly, right? He's like, well, we don't have it, but we're trying to figure it out. Who's we? You cannot figure this out by yourself. And I think I asked the question in the chat box, where's the school and family engagement office? Is it that you guys don't have enough staff to them? Like, this is not, I don't know why, to me, the principals seem like they don't know that there's support. It's not just them doing it by themselves. And it's not just Montebello. Let me tell you, I had this issue at Margaret Brent. I had this issue at other schools. And it's not just me, right? We're talking to other parents. No parent here goes to Montebello. I'm the only one. Every other school has the same issue. Especially when you don't have a group of parents collectively getting together and saying, well, we're just going to do it with or without the principal. And if the principal doesn't work for us, we're going to escort them out the building. That's not what's happening with most of our schools. We're just like, okay, well, if the school doesn't offer it, we don't get it for our kids. And our kids, to me, deserve the best. Not just my kid, right? But all the kids. How can we partner with Enoch Pratt? What do we need to partner with Dolly Parton? Somebody, you know what I mean? If we know that you guys have these strategic buckets, getting our literacy rates up, getting our math skills together, who can we partner with outside of grant asking to say, hey, we can get volunteer librarians, retired somebody, or volunteer bus drivers, whatever it is, these are the issues we're having. How do we, communicate with our parents to say, look, these are the issues we're having. Your school doesn't have a librarian. And if you lived in a different district, it would have a librarian and you wouldn't have to worry about it, but you don't. Like, how do we get our schools and our district to say, we know that we're lacking in this. How can we think differently?
All right, are we ready for me to respond?
Go ahead, Sharika.
Yeah, so Larry, I think we're saying the same thing in terms of creative problem solving is crucial now. And so it is encouraged, it is supported, it is being led centrally. If you all are seeing, examples of where you think there are ideas, creative ideas that just are not being, thoughtfully considered, please raise those, because, to my understanding is that creative problem solving is really central at this point.
So can the district require outdoor lunch and provide canopies and tables to all the schools and make it happen?
Yep, so the expectation is outdoor lunch, and schools are being asked for what are the resources that you need to make that happen? Not every school needs a tent or table. And so in terms of making the investment, you know, there's a desire to right size the investment to fit the situation. I've been at schools this week that they can do outdoor lunch without a single purchase.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to switch gears to the virtual, the home base. Was that where you were going? Virtual instruction during quarantine? Well,
There was
not,
one question that we missed from, I think it was Amanda.
Students being required to eat the school lunch instead of bring their own?
Yes.
I hadn't heard of that, but a parent has emailed and said that they were told that the child couldn't bring their own lunch.
Yeah, I'm not, that doesn't sound like any rule that we have.
And then we also have from Melissa, principals are describing intense pressure to do health and safety and bring test scores up, or at least not fall back. I feel badly for many of them, honestly. They are, I'm sorry, guys. They are describing, They are describing to trusted parents immense difficulty and stress to do it all at once. I feel like we're burning our excellent staff by expecting them to ask rather than being proactive on outdoor lunch and other items. And then another question was, do all the schools have nurses on staff now, from Charles, every day during school hours?
So Melissa, are you saying, in terms of being proactive on outdoor lunch, are you saying you would rather see just a set menu of items purchased and provided to schools?
I'm saying maybe to let them know that they're on offer, or that creative solutions are possible. What I hear from the, albeit relatively few principals that I know, but you know, small n, is that they seem, and teacher leader types too, is that they seem frankly under duress. Like people are really losing it, and it's day 4, trying to do all the things at once, and they're describing this intense pressure, and they're like, we just want to know what the district wants from us. We just want to know what we're supposed to be doing and can do to help. And every time we have to ask a question, it takes such a long time to get an answer. And parents are saying it takes such a long time to get an answer from the principal. So we've got parents and community members asking principals for things. It just seems like the information is coming slowly, and I know that there's a lot of pressure. And I'm not even really sure, and I'm sorry, because I'm going to be quiet in 1 second, that I have a question about this, except that it to me is not a great sign when I'm hearing from like principal and teacher friends of mine on day 4 that they're like, we just, no, this is my last year. Like, I thought I could do it again, and no, I can't do it. And North Avenue wants us to raise test scores, and I've already got 3 cases, and I'm trying to figure out how to get families tested, and I don't have my special ed students here because we can't get transport in, and I'm expected to manage all these things all at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I can really only agree that working through this pandemic is intense. I agree with you. There was another question after.
I was going to say, I guess my comment is that I feel that the district was really pushing to say, we got this and everything's going to be in order. And now we're hearing, yes, we understand. It's hard. I guess for parents, it just doesn't seem like you had enough time to get all this together. It seemed rushed. Even teachers, it seems like we just dropped it and just say, just make it work. There was no real full plan, or at least it was a last minute plan. And possibly maybe you had a long time, but it really feels as though it's just a rush and we're just gonna make it seem like it's gonna work. And that's the part that's getting parents' anxiety up high. I know with me, it just doesn't seem like no structure. It seems like whatever we thought was going to happen is totally different on the first day of school. And that's making all of us adjust. And I get it. I mean, we're in a unprecedented time, but I'm just saying the cheering that we were hearing in the beginning is not what we expected on the first day. And I just wanted to say, the parent cafe, I only want to bring it up because maybe that's something that, you can disperse something, and it's supposed to have been, I guess, every school was trying to get this parent cafe going. I want to say that several parents have tried to reach out to that email, and including myself, and we have not received any feedback to say when it was going to happen. Was there a training? I have an email that I never got a response back to. And I think even utilizing those parent cafes, utilizing those PTOs, PTAs, those school family council, I think that helps disperse this information to everyone. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing that. And that could be something the district sends out, and then everyone sends out the same message, the same talking points, the same, and I think if we use that, because I signed up because I thought it was a great idea, but unfortunately that happened over the summer and I haven't heard anything, not even just a thank you for submitting your information and inquiring about it. So, we have to utilize these things. I thought it was a great idea. And I don't know who even is supposed to be heading this, but no feedback. And that just goes back to the communication again. But I'm here for it. Like, I want to see the same message going through all the schools. And that was one of the ways that we can do it.
So it sounds like Tina said she'll check on the status of that and get back to us. Thank you for that. There was a question back in the chat from Charles about if we have school nurses on staff every day during school hours, and and Melissa followed up if they're RNs versus LPNs.
Yeah, we have a nursing shortage nationally. So that's just that's an honest conversation, right? We have the CPG dollars, the Conservation of Poverty Grant dollars that actually pays for nurses in 132 of our schools that receive this funding. And we literally cannot find the nurses to cover those schools. The health department gets those resources directly from us, and they hire and staff the nurses in our schools. So what we have right now is nurses aides in several schools with a sponsoring nurse. And Melissa, I can't tell you if it's an RN or LPN. I'm just telling you what I know from, the budgeting conversations, is that they have a supervising nurse, who then goes around to a set of 3 or 4 schools and supervises those health aides to provide nursing services. We actually have the funding to do this. We've been doing, outreach and through the health department to find them. We simply don't have nurses. I just want to comment also, like, I have schools that have worked really hard to put money in their budgets to find librarians, and we literally do not have certified librarians applying for the positions. So there's a catch-22 here of really trying to put the right things in place for kids and to equitably fund schools, and then not being able to find those people is really disheartening for our schools. So I want to honor that. And I think, I think Angie, you said this, there are a lot of things that we've done right. And I just want to say that, like, the health and safety protocols at city schools is strong, right? This lunch piece, I think, has caused a lot of stress for people that was undue. And we should sort of make sure we're having a better or stronger way of communicating with folks about lunch. I will say that I've read the petition that was circulating. I want to just honor one thing that has not been said here, that the majority of parents who signed that petition are at charter schools, and charter schools actually got their ESSER dollars directly from the district. They didn't have to go by what we were going to provide or plan or whatever. So they actually have money in their budgets. And I would just offer to those families, and we're putting this out as part of our communication, they can actually ask their charter schools to purchase the outdoor lunch equipment, right? But I will say we also have schools that don't have the space outside to do that. And as Sharika has said, it's not a requirement to have this tenting outside, but there are ways that schools can pivot, like having lunch in the classroom, and it's not ideal. Like, we are in an imperfect moment, and it's real, right? And I want to honor that and acknowledge that. And it's hard. My kids are in school too, right? Both of my kids are in public school, and my son is eating outside on the sidewalk, right? He's in a tented space. He's taking his lunch outside. He's eating it on a sidewalk. At this point, we're doing, I don't want to say that we're doing the best we can, but we're doing what we can to make sure we're trying to honor the really strong health and safety protocols that have been put in place by our health advisory, the health department, et cetera. And it's going to take time for us to have IELDs and principals have supervisory to make sure that things are happening the way it's supposed to happen and having things flagged for us when they're not happening appropriately. So I'm not saying like just be patient and we'll figure it out, but I am saying we're working on it. And I understand your frustration, especially with the transportation thing. Like it killed me to find out that we had all these kids on day one that weren't getting picked up because we had these people that called in sick. And I don't know what to tell you other than we're trying to hire these people to. And this is a national problem. This is not just a Baltimore City problem. The state across, we've called other districts to find out what their transport. They have the same issue of kids not getting picked up. So I would want to assure you, we recognize it. We are working on it. We will hopefully come back with answers that are stronger than what we can give you right now about that, but know that we're paying attention to this. And it is real and we are acknowledging it, but also just know we're working on it as well. And that's probably not the best answer I can give you. It's the best answer I can give you right now. It's not satisfactory and I know that, but I do just want to honor that. And then Jamie, I've been writing back and forth with you in the chat. I was going to type this, so I'll just say it now, that we do try to honor school-based budgets first. Like we have taken significant cuts at central office. And I'm Melissa, and I heard you loud and clear about schools and principals and teachers, but guess what? We have lost a significant number of staff at central office too, because we're burning them out also with the amount of work we're placing on our public system employees in general. I work every night until probably midnight. And don't feel sorry for me, but I'm telling you, the resignations are coming in from central office staff also because they are burnt out. We're all trying to do the best we can and figure all this out. And so while principals and teachers aren't doing that, we're having the same problem at Central, and we are understaffed at Central. Why? Because we tried in earnest to put money in schools and then have schools with their budget councils make the right decisions for their school communities. And my team is trying to support the families being engaged in those school-based budget decision-making processes and whatnot, so that we get the right things for kids at schools. And I agree, Ms. Drake, every school should have art. Every school should have PE. Every school should have a librarian. And right now with site-based school budget making, schools are allowed to sort of make decisions and difficult decisions about having an extra teacher to limit the class size over here or have a librarian, coupled with the fact that we can't find the librarians in the first place. So it's hard. We're working on it. I'm not, probably not super comforting to you, but I just want to say that out loud. This is hard all the way around. And I appreciate you all being honest and elevating this. Mark and I are taking notes. I know Sharika, Monique, and others are taking notes. We're going to take this back to folks to make sure they hear you loud and clear. And also from the broader communication we're getting from social media and emails, et cetera. We're really trying to work on it. Sorry, I didn't want to monopolize time, but.
No, thank you so much we appreciate honesty above all. So thank you for your responses, even if they may not be satisfactory or exactly what people want to hear. Honest answers is what we're looking for, and transparency above all else. So thank you so much. Thank you, Kira. You and I are on the same wavelength. There was one question that came up a lot in the Google form and we haven't addressed yet, and we're coming up to the 8 o'clock, which would be nice to be done by then if we can. Which is the students are going to be quarantined. Testing is going to start hopefully in a week, and quarantines will start. And it sounds like students sent home will be doing work packets, and parents are very, frustrated about that. They want them to be able to have access to virtual instruction, especially after having had access to it in the spring. So is there a plan to make that a higher quality experience from home for students?
Yeah, good evening again, everyone. My name is Mark Etienne. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, new Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. For the last 6 years, I've been an ILED, Instructional Leadership Executive Director for one of our CLNs, and supervised 14, sometimes 15 schools on the east side of town. So like the other things that have come up, this is a very complex problem. But the good news is there will be plans in place to provide access for students to resources so that their learning can continue while they are quarantined. I will just say very directly that we will probably not see the type of what we call hybrid teaching that we saw last year, where a teacher had 12 to 15 students in the classroom, and then maybe 20 students at home, and taught both of them at the same time. There are a couple of things that were very problematic about this. One, it was incredibly troubling and hard for teachers to do. We lost a lot of teachers due to burnout with this. It was very difficult for students to be able to engage. Some schools did it really well. Some schools really struggled. Some schools had the resources for it. Some schools did not. So we took a step back and tried to figure out the right approach to this. And quite frankly, we're taking an approach where we're meeting schools where they are based on resources. So I'll tell you a little bit about the plan, and I'd love to field the questions that you might have or suggestions that you might have as well. First, there are 3 types of learning that we want students to be able to engage in if and when they're quarantined. The first are offline assignments, which some people refer to as packets, but they are also activities like reading independently or any type of learning that a child can do independently at home without need to access a computer. The second type of learning will be asynchronous activities that they can access online, either through Google Classroom, through the Clever portal, that they can independently complete and then submit to their teacher for credit so that they don't have to worry about losing a grade. And then the third and most challenging type of learning is the synchronous learning, which is again what hybrid looked like last year, where a teacher would be teaching the way we're communicating now, but then also being able to work with students that are in person. Where we found that to be most successful is where we had multiple adults being able to manage and work with a particular class. So a teacher is able to teach the students in person and have another colleague with them online moderating for the students that were online. Not every classroom had the amount of teachers necessary or staff necessary to do this. So again, it varied across schools how effective the hybrid model was. So a couple of different things that we're looking at this year. One, we are asking schools to think about the best ways that they can provide school-based lessons for those students that come directly for the teacher. In some cases, the schools are already doing this, and as students are quarantining now, the teachers have prepared those lessons from the curriculum. They've been able to communicate with parents and get them home. But in so many other instances that we've already talked about tonight, it's not consistent across the whole system. So we know that, and we're trying to plug that. Secondly, we're creating centrally based resources that are aligned to the standards, aligned to the curriculum content, but are available asynchronously through different platforms that they can access with their password that they all have now, that allow them to continue to be engaged, but it might not be the exact same work that they're seeing in their classroom. And then finally, we're trying to find a way to create a Zoom in structure where the students can access the live classroom, but they would be able to listen in and they would be able to observe, but it wouldn't be like it was last year where they would have hand-raising features and the teacher would be able to work with both of them together. And so we've asked schools to create a plan. We've given them a template. Centrally, my team is working on developing a litany of resources that allow them to work on skills for filling unfinished learning gaps. So skills that they may not have mastered yet that they need for grade level to help them be able to catch up, but also grade level content that's aligned to the standards asynchronously. Schools are also deciding if they're going to have their teachers have a set of lessons that they'll give directly to families or choose from the centrally based resources or both. And then we've asked schools to explore the possibility for a Zoom in function so that at least the laptop or the camera could be set up for the parents and the students to access what's happening live and then work with their students to be able to complete the work in real time. And then once we get into the later weeks of the fall and we're able to stand up our extended time program, which will be time after school for students to engage, we're hoping to support schools with developing office hours so that teachers could have stipends to be able to stay after school. And if a student was Zooming in live but gets lost or isn't really clear on something, they can meet with their teacher or different teachers to be able to get the access and support that they need to complete those lessons or get some form of intervention or tutoring. And then lastly, because schools are in different places in terms of staffing and in terms of resources, some schools need their laptops right now to be able to prepare for testing. And so for them to be able to give out laptops to quarantine students, it could disrupt their testing program. We're working with ITD to help schools come up with plans to be able to not only have enough laptops for testing, but also distribute resources and laptops and pads to their students that are quarantined so that they can Zoom in, so that they can access the asynchronous lessons. And so in a nutshell, we will have a plan. The resources will be available for students at the time that testing begins, so that as students begin to quarantine in larger numbers, the schools will already have a plan that they can make available to parents and families and students, and that their teachers can easily access so that students can engage in learning in multitude of different ways while they're quarantined. Let me stop here, see if there are any questions, and see if I can field them or at least take them back and come back to you if I don't have the answers to your questions right now.
Thank you for that. Just on the timeline, so parents, is it that parents can expect to know what the plan is on September 13th, which is the first day of the third week of school?
Close to that. We're thinking probably the week after. So right now, if a student is quarantined today, their point of contact is the teacher, and if not the teacher, the team of teachers or the principal, to be able to get the resources they need for their student. By probably the week of September, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I would say after September 13th, the week after the testing, we should have everything secured in place to easily draw down. The resources that are being created centrally will likely be ready by the 20th. We think schools will have their plans prepared and able to get feedback on those plans by around September the 13th. But as those plans are coming back for feedback, we want to be able to enhance them and strengthen them and make sure that we're covering all bases before they go out to families so that we don't have too much back and forth. I mean, we always want questions and we always want to get better, but we want to make sure that what we have is tight and consistent across the system. So that will happen around the week of the 13th, which means that by the week of the 20th, everything should be available for families, for parents to be able to access, including the resources that they could use to support their students at home. And this would be from pre-K all the way to 12.
Thank you.
Looks like Nicole has a question.
Hey, good evening. I wanted to go back to the point about not having the funding, but not being able to locate the teachers or not being enough like librarians available. And so I just wanted to find out what the district is doing or any plans that are in place. And if that's a lengthy conversation, I'll take a PowerPoint or some documentation around that. But what is the district doing to kind of alleviate that problem, whether it's connecting with local colleges and universities? I remember there was a program a couple of years ago to get teachers of color into the building, or was it around males? I'm sorry, I forgot. But it was like a really intense, thought out program. And so I'm just wondering, knowing that we have not enough librarians, probably not enough foreign language teachers, music, all of that.
Yep.
What are we, what's the district's plan?
It's an excellent question, and I wish I had a better answer. As Tina mentioned, it's a problem much larger than Baltimore, but locally in Baltimore, we've tried to take some steps to address the problem. We do have a work group in our human capital office that is working very hard to recruit more Black and brown teachers, quite frankly, to Baltimore City. With seeing that we're not only seeing more teachers now come into the district, but we're beginning to slowly retain more of our teachers. So baby steps, but we're starting to see some improvement in our data around that. Librarians is a hard one because, as Tina mentioned, we're not getting a lot of applications to the program. So we're trying to find ways to incentivize teachers to go back to school to get their certification, to go back to get the training they need. We're finding ways to work with Enoch Pratt, our partner, to help support that. But it's a huge challenge. I would label it as a crisis, quite frankly. And the same is true for other roles.
I think that like the partnership with Enoch Pratt will be your most beneficial when it comes to librarians. People are not majoring in library science anymore.
Yeah.
That was a major back in, I mean, I'll date myself, like, but you know, when I was in college, that was probably the last group of people that were really going to school for library science to be school librarians. People aren't going into those majors anymore. People aren't majoring in foreign languages. and the point, well, they're majoring in foreign languages, but not to teach it, right? But not to be a teacher, but to use it abroad and to use it, in a way to make more money than teaching foreign language in a middle school, elementary school. I think that that relationship with Enoch Pratt could probably be built on a little bit more, to maybe even think about how Enoch Pratt hires librarians for schools, right?
Yeah.
Versus hiring librarians for their centers, but even thinking about schools as satellite libraries as well. And maybe that could be the process to kind of help that out.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point.
Just
Go ahead,
real
Tina.
quick, Mark, on the library piece. So Kelly Shambuko from Enoch Pratt and I've been emailing regularly, and she's been asking, can I go into schools now? Because we had a prohibition of outside partners coming into schools to do work. I have given her the green light. Let's go. Let's get as many schools as possible, and they are ready and willing. And so we're trying to get that communication out to schools to make sure they have that. I've also been working with some principals to even like IELDs, to Mark's point. If you had money in your budget for a librarian, can we move that money over to a temp position, to somebody else's point earlier, that we can then get it was Ms. Drayton, that we can actually get temps in there to check out the books, right? And to support teachers and getting library time for kids, so they can actually have somebody in a space to like manage the library itself. So we're trying to work on that. But I want to flag something that's really important that HC, and I don't know if Mark knows this, but the last 3 years, we have started out with a teacher vacancy of around 600 teachers in the middle of the summer, right? For the last 3 years, we have had under 100 teacher vacancies for all of our schools, with this year being around 70 teachers. That's it. So I hear you on the sort of the foreign language or other things, but right now we are sitting at under 100 vacancies, which has been unprecedented. In years past, we had so many more starting the school year out. So human capital is really working to make sure that we are staffing our schools appropriately on day one, right? And so we're still trying to fill those vacancies that we speak right now, but we do have at least much more appropriately staffed schools than we have had years past. So, but I agree with you, Larry, that Enoch Pratt thing, if schools want to flag that for us, we are willing and ready to get them connected. Sorry, Mark, I want to cut you off.
No, that's exactly right. And I just saw that data recently. I was really inspired by that data because it's been such a heavy lift. And so the coordination between schools and human capital and other offices to really understand why teachers were leaving and what to do to retain them, where to recruit. I mean, folks have gone to different countries to recruit and bring in qualified folks to get certified. I mean, it's been a lot of different work to get to this point. But I think the biggest thing I'm taking away from tonight, and I'm so grateful that Dr. Dabrowski could not be here so that I could and hear this directly from you, is that it all comes down to communication. I mean, this is a big win for us to be 3 years in a row, closing the gap of vacancies, but families wouldn't know that. What they do know is that this school doesn't have a music teacher, and that's really important. Or like Ms. Drayton mentioned, her child can't have honors. It could be because the honors teacher might not be at that school anymore. And if they don't have the teacher, how can they teach honors? So for many families, including me, I have 3 children, we see exactly what's going on in our school. And we want the best for our kids. We want the best for all kids as well. But what we see easily is what's happening right in front of us. And I think Tina and others, and now we have to get back and figure out how to continue to build on our communication strategy, so that, like I'm going to hopefully pronounce your name right, Ms. Winder said, there's a through line so that all schools are getting the same information. And when I think about the virtual options or the asynchronous and then the offline options for quarantine students, yes, we'll be able to get schools to develop plans. But now I want to go back to my team and other teams that I work with to figure out, what is our message so that schools have the same message? It's coming centrally. All families know, if my student gets quarantined, these are my options. This is where I can find them. And if I have questions, I already know who I can go to get answers. I think if we can get that part right, it'll help to de-escalate the anxiety and kind of help people be able to move forward. And the last thing I'll say is, Tina's not the only one working late. I don't mind working late. My team doesn't mind working late. We are going hard for our kids. But this is having a toll everywhere. People are dying. People are struggling. And the thing that we've been focusing on the most, at least I've been focusing on the most, is really just falling back and taking the pressure off and being clear on what's most important. Obviously, health and safety is important, but also having clarity on what good instruction is during this time, how to make sure students want to be in school and are excited about being in school. That doesn't happen by itself. I think Chief Davis has done a good job in prioritizing climate and culture for the opening weeks of school and into the month of October, where normally some schools will hit the ground and get right into instruction. So I forgot who put it in the chat, but somebody wrote, like the pressure that principals are feeling to both have health and safety and get results and get the scores up. I'm sure that there are a lot of folks out there with that pressure, but I also want it to be known that we've taken steps to make sure that schools do not feel extra pressure to perform academically. We always want our students to improve. That's a bottom line. But when we set goals last year, we didn't set the type of incremental improvement goals that we typically do because we knew that there was going to be a lot of different changes happening while we were virtual. And as we've opened up the school year again, we focused on building relationship. We focused on welcoming students back. We've worked really hard to not intentionally or unintentionally apply pressure to schools to do well. I think our people, particularly our teachers, are very driven and want to get results. And they know that ultimately we're expected to improve. And so we are trying very hard to de-escalate that pressure. And if there are other things that we can do to help teachers, paraprofessionals, principals, assistant principals, secretaries, any school staff, really focusing on being safe and being in community with each other and building the type of climate and culture where we're giving each other grace safely and doing our best to learn, we are wide open to that because we're really working hard to make sure that schools are either not burning out or getting mixed messages about having to have high performance academically while also figuring out how kids are going to eat lunch outside. We know that that's tension and we're doing our best to relieve that tension. So there are other things we can do. We're wide open for it. Tina and I work very closely together along with others on this call. And we're going to continue to improve and we're going to continue to see safer and more collaborative and joy in schools, but not at the expense of losing our teachers. They are some of our most valuable resources.
Definitely. So did I just see another hand come up? No, that was Angie's hand. If there aren't any more questions, or any folks don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, sorry, I do.
Go right ahead.
I just want to say thank you to the Baltimore City team that came on, and thank you to PCAB as well. But thank you to the Baltimore City team. No, it is not perfect. Yeah, there's a lot of room for growth, but I appreciate you guys showing up. You listen to our frustrations. I'm sitting here quietly tonight because I'm highly frustrated and nervous as a parent, but I appreciate you guys coming out. I just want to say, please make sure you are taking care of yourself and practicing self-care. And that's for all of us as we're going through this, this time together. And also to the PCAB family, and maybe this is for the retreat, but just figuring out how we can get parents together to start advocating. Because in my opinion, the district is a little bit limited and hands tied sometimes when it comes to funding, resources. And so although I still think there's room for growth, sometimes I'm listening to the district. And if you don't have the money, and if we don't have the teachers, or if the governor is vetoing different things, some of that ties their hands. So what as an organization can we do, or as a board, to empower parents to start going and advocating on behalf of the kids? Because I just feel like we've been in this position for a long time. Kudos, district. Yes, you guys have made growth, but we still have babies that are in schools that are just not, it's not right. And we're gonna have brown and black babies who are not going to meet with success because they are at schools that are subpar. And so there's just a lot of the work that needs to be done for both of our organizations. But I do appreciate you guys showing up and listening and trying to provide answers.
Larry, if I could just say one quick thing, I appreciate that so much. And I would say we can take the questions. we can go back and get answers, and we're here for it. Like, it's hard, right? I'm not saying it's easy, but my own kids are over here trying to run to the camera. It is hard, but we are here for it. And I texted Mark and said, you're gonna have to come to all these meetings from now on. I think having somebody from academics, if it's not Mark, Joan, or someone from ops and myself at these meetings, so we hear it directly and then can actually take back and get the answers right for you in real time. But we would appreciate collaboration with PCAB. And if we want to think through together, what are those key pieces that PCAB wants to think about this year and district together that we can then walk side by side? Because we're not always going to agree, and I know that, and that's totally fine. But what do we want to do together, and what push do you want from the district? Because we can't do everything. So to your point, Nicole, like, what are the priorities from PCAB, especially from this executive board, that we can work on together to make sure we're addressing, here my daughter in the background, sorry, well, how we can address this together. I'm all for it. So that's what I'm saying, collaboration. I'd love to do that.
So thanks everyone for actually kind of touching some of the things that we have planned for our retreat, September 11th. Thanks, Nicole, because you kind of closed us out. You said everything that I was actually going to say. And thanking you guys for being with us tonight. Sharika, you got one more thing you want to say?
Yeah.
I saw your church
So
phone.
in the spirit of partnership, one thing that has been weighing on my mind is just when the testing does start, we do anticipate seeing an increase in cases, right? Because the testing is the purpose of it is to identify cases. So I just ask you all to be thinking about when those numbers are rising. We want to identify the cases. That's what we want to have happen. But that's also kind of tough news to hear, when we expect to have all these additional cases. So if you all have thoughts about how to message that to folks appropriately, because
Message it now. We anticipate more cases when we start testing. Do it today.
Get it out now.
Don't wait till it happens.
Message it now and put back the dashboard as quickly as you possibly can.
Dashboard should be up next week, Melissa, just so you know. We're updating it right now. I can't give you the exact date, but it will be up hopefully next week. I can't promise it. I am 90% sure, but it will be up. And then I agree, we'll start messaging it right now.
But again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. These are the kind of conversations that make us all stronger. And it really kind of tightens up our partnership. No, we're not going to always agree on everything. Even within our own groups, we're not always agreeing. But again, that makes us all stronger. And we know that all of this is about the young people and families of Baltimore, making things better for them. So again, thank you everybody from Baltimore City Public Schools who joined us tonight. Just like Chief Highcover said, some of you guys will have to start joining us for some of our other meetings that we have. We have a standing meeting with her office, and maybe during some of those times, some of you guys can join us for some of those conversations as well. I would like to ask for the PCAB folks to stay on for a couple of minutes after everybody leaves. We just have some really quick things that we want to go through. But again, thanks everybody for being on tonight.